Welcome back, everybody, to the Orion GoTo 14-inch Dobsonian restoration process. So this time we're going to be talking about a lot of stuff that goes on here, mainly the SynScan controller and the power. That's what we're going to be doing in this video. Let's start with the power. This one, I bought it used. It came with a cigarette lighter 12-volt DC adapter. So you plug this in there and then you run this to a cigarette lighter on your car. I think they're still called cigarette lighters, right? Or they just called 12-volt adapters. But this works great. You can basically drag the telescope anywhere as long as you're near your car, and you can power it with this. But that's not very convenient for, say, being here, let's say at the house or in the backyard or something like that. It would be great if you could just run an extension cord and have it go straight into wall current. And as it turns out, you can. You can buy this adapter, and it comes with a multitude of plugs to basically help adapt it to whatever your input is for your system. This supposedly has some smart electronics in it. But as it turns out, you can just use the basic plug that comes with it, 12 volts DC. It happens to have the right inside pin for that. And you plug this into the power, right? This is plugged into the wall. And pull this out. I'm going to push on this flimsy power switch that always seems to be on these Orion GoTo telescopes. Let's see if it lights up. It's coming online. There's a red background. It's hard to see with all the lights here. It's initializing, and it says SynScan version 4.05.17. So the power seems to be working, and it's running off of wall current right now. When I start up my SynScan systems, it's going to ask for a lot of basic information, time, latitude, longitude, and all that. I use an app that apparently you can't get anymore, and it's called SynScan Init 2.1. It's on Android. It may be on Apple. But it basically fills in all those values. It tells you your latitude, longitude, daylight savings, etc., all that good stuff. I'm going to go ahead and do that. I'm going to push enter. Now, what's interesting is I just pushed enter and it didn't take it. Push it again. Push it again. What if I push escape? Escape doesn't work. Oh, that time it worked. Oh, it took it back to initializing. The buttons on this are not working as they should. In fact, that's going to be the second thing that we deal with. Push enter. Okay, now it finally registered pushing enter, and it is saying the warning of don't look directly at the sun, obviously. Push it again. It asks for longitude. Daylight savings, that's the proper answer. Begin alignment, no. I just want to move this a little bit. So I'm going to do some, I'm going to tilt it down. Okay, let's try up and down again. The up and down seems to respond pretty quick. There's a slight delay. Let's try left and right. Try left. Yeah, this button's not working very well. There's a lot of lag in that azimuth motor. You can hear the motor runs for about a second before you see any movement whatsoever. So I think I'm gonna, because it's so heavy and I have to strip it all down, I'm gonna be dedicating a whole video to basically dissecting the azimuth motor. I think the elevation motor is actually okay. So everything seems to be working. So I think the next thing we have to do is clean up these buttons. And I'm going to show you a way to do this. I've used it on at least a couple of SynScan controllers, and it's pretty straightforward and anybody can do it. All right, let's go ahead and start that. All right, so here's the SynScan controller, and we found that several of the buttons don't really work anymore. So we're going to open this up. This just has a bunch of Phillips head screws. We'll need a small screwdriver. It looks like somebody handled this while they were painting with white paint. I might try to clean that off in a little bit. Yeah. So we need to get to the other side of this where the buttons go. All right. I'm going to lift this circuit board up so I can get to the other side. Now, something of interest is this says Celestron. Look at that. That says Celestron. So I guess It's, just rebranded as Orion. All right, so I'm going to try to tip this up. Let's make this easy. Just going to take this out too. I'm not going to disconnect any of these, but I am going to lift all this up. Take that off there. Just very gently. I don't want to strain anything. What we're concerned with are these gold connectors. All right? So what we're going to do, we're going to take an old number 2 pencil and we're going to rub these contacts. Believe it or not, this does make a difference. Just slowly go over all these. Don't be too hard on them though. Be relatively gentle. This is a trick that I used for the old slot cars that I used to have in the 1980s. Just rubbing some of the corrosion that comes, I guess, from, I don't know, arcing. Would that be? I don't think arcing would be a problem with these. Here's the escape button, which they have labeled as undo. That one was really not working. Enter was not working as well. Now, just in case I have some eraser debris on here, I'm going to use use an air blower to get just any dust or anything else out. So, all right. Someone once told me to also use a swab and a little bit of isopropyl alcohol, because some pencil erasers have a vegetable oil plasticizer that leaves a non-conductive residue on there. So, let's do that. So I'm just cleaning these off, and we should be good to go. Just gently put this back without bending the ribbon cable or cracking anything. All right, just like that. Put these 2 little bushings there. Put that screw there. Now, we should be able to put this back on and put it back together. All right. Now, I'm going to see if I can get some of this, whatever that old paint is or whatever it was, off there. And that's not looking like it's going to come. But that's okay. It's just aesthetics. The one thing I do want to do, though, is, I guess in all the years that they used this, they never took this front screen cover off. And I thought this would be kind of fun. Look at that. Very satisfying. Look at that. Very satisfying. Look at that. Looks brand new. Now let's go plug it in and see if the buttons are working a little bit better. Okay, so I'm going to plug it in. And I'm going to push this flimsy power button on. Let's see if it turns on. It does. Initializing. Initializing, good sign. And it is backlit. It's hard to see, but it is backlit. It's a reddish light. It says SynScan version 04.05.17. Now, last time I had to push enter a few times. Oh, look at that. The enter button works. Yep. We'll zoom through all this. And alignment. Let's see if the 2 works pretty easy. No. Okay, that works pretty well. Let's check the elevation. Elevation's working great. The button is. Azimuth is working, but there's all that lag. There's a lot of slop in the gears. I think that something's loose in how it's attached to the base. But the good news is that the hand controller buttons are all fixed now. So you can use that technique on yours. I think that probably works on a lot of different brands. I'm not sure. Go forth with caution, obviously. Do some research. And so we've got a power source that doesn't require a car. We've got buttons that work. And the next thing that we have to do is update the firmware to the latest. So let's break out the old Windows XP laptop. Okay, so we're going to attempt to update the firmware on the SynScan controller itself. I have it sitting over here on this wonderful science fiction book. But what we're going to do is we're going to download 2 bits of software. One is an executable from Orion that is the firmware loader, and then we're going to download the actual firmware. So to get to that page, we go to Google and we type in Orion SynScan firmware update, like that. And we're going to the one that's telescope.com. That's what Orion owns. A couple of things before we get started. I went ahead and bought this USB to basically phone cable adapter. And this is what they call the RJ12. Typically this would be through a serial port, but we're going to use USB. I'm just going to plug this in, and hopefully it detects it automatically. And I'm going to plug the other end into this hole on the bottom. Like that. The other thing I should mention is I tried to do this on my Windows XP computer and it didn't work. It didn't have a driver. It was just too old. So we've come to the basically Windows 10 computer here. So it says that it's plugged in. The device is ready to go. This might be a little bit confusing because the page says SynScan version 5. This is a version 4. And the way you tell is basically, from what I can tell, it's got these little teeth on the side. This is the version 4. Version 5 doesn't have those teeth, but effectively we're going to be using the same software. So it's all along the right side here, okay? So the first thing we're going to download is the actual firmware right here. It's just a file. Basically, it's an informational file. And it's the same file for, I guess, both. And it's version 4.39.20. That'll be the latest and greatest. So we'll do that. It's downloading. All right, so it's already downloaded. Excellent. And I'm going to copy that to the desktop. I'm going to save it to the desktop. Now for the real piece of software, we're going to be downloading the SynScan hand controller firmware loader, version 3.3. I know that's confusing because 3.3 sounds really old, but this is actually the executable. All right. Now, this is what I'm using for my specific case. Please do research on your version of the SynScan controller or whatever you're using, because it is possible if you do this wrong, if you don't have power backup, or if the cable's wrong, you can actually ruin it. If you don't want to risk that, then please stop and don't do this. Let's go ahead and run this. Okay, so it's asking for the location of the file. We put it on the desktop. All right. Now let's see what this does. We'll push update. I've got it set to automatically detect COM port. Cannot connect to SynScan hand controller.
After many attempts and failures, even manually trying out each COM port, I finally downloaded the user manual and figured out exactly what I was doing wrong.
Okay, so here's what I had to do, and I didn't realize this, but the SynScan has to be connected back to the telescope, right? And you also have to have the little RJ12 connector connected to the USB port. And before you run any update, you have to hold down the 0 and the 8 key simultaneously and power on the telescope. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to hold down 0 and 8. Turn on the telescope, and it says SynScan update version 2.4. And it says once you do that, you can let go. All right. This is the SynScan firmware loader. And we'll push update and see what it does. Erasing flash ROM, it says. This is a little scary. Oh, look at that. It's going. I don't want to move. I'm holding very still. It's up to almost 2%. Okay, I'll probably just time-lapse this through to the end.
And it's done. Let's go see how this works.
Okay, so here we are. We have the improved SynScan. I've got the power plugged in, and it's running to here. Let's push the power button and see what we've got here. We've instantly got a red backlight. That's good. It says initializing. And let's see what version it says. Hopefully it says the newest version. Initializing. SynScan version 4.39.20. That's the version we just updated. This is the most up-to-date firmware from the Orion website as of right now. This is good news. Okay, let's push the enter button. All right, it says warning. Never use this to point at the sun. Push enter. Again, the buttons are working great now. I'm going to go through this initial setup. I'm going to skip the alignment. All right, let's check out elevation. It's looking good. And you know what's interesting? On elevation, as soon as you hear the motors turning, you see movement. Let's try azimuth. There's still that lag. You hear the motors going, but it doesn't start moving right away. It's, again, I still suspect that there is something loose down in the mechanism here, in the gearbox or whatever. So what did we do? Well, so we now have AC power going to this. That's great. Don't need a car to run this telescope. We have all these newly working buttons. If you know of a better way to clean the button contacts, please leave a comment down below. I would appreciate any input. We have the latest and greatest firmware on here. So what's the good news? Well, the good news is all this seems to be working, and it seems like both motors are working well. Elevation is working great. Azimuth just has that delay. And you know, I think in the next video we'll dive into the azimuth motor. In fact, it'll be interesting to tear this open and just see how this works, right? I've always, been kind of curious to see how this works on these larger telescopes. So please, subscribe and like and leave a comment down below. Clear skies, everybody. And oh, by the way, if you want to see another older restoration that I did, actually fixing an old Meade telescope, go ahead and click on this video.